Right, Ali and Dad, you start.
I'm happy to start.
Right, you start.
Oh,
Okay,
you
Dad,
start,
you
Dad.
go.
You know best.
Yeah, I do.
Right, go.
I never get a chance to say it. So Sandra and I were married for 31 years. As you can see, we had, well, you can't see all four, but we had 4 lovely daughters, all 2 years apart, very, very easy to count. Sandra lived for the family. When we first met, we talked about having a big family, and it came to fruition. People say to me quite often, "Oh, were you waiting for a boy?" And no, we weren't. We just wanted a number of children, and Sandra and I were very happy to have 4 girls.
So our mum was very caring, and she was always there to help others. That was at her core. So first and foremost with the family, but also in her career. She actually started off as an archaeologist in her early life, and she absolutely loved that. She got to travel quite a lot with that as well. And then later in life, she was a careers advisor, so that was helping young people in school. So yeah, at her heart, she was always looking out for others. She'd put herself last. Yeah, I think it was very much the same when she got poorly as well, in that throughout the whole thing, she was always thinking about us and what would be best. What all the decisions that you and her made were in the best interests of us, particularly actually when she came into the hospice.
Lindsay at the time was working in London, and she didn't want Lindsay to be interrupted in her career to worry about her. So she was very, very keen to keep it very close and not worry the girls too much, so as they could carry on with what they were doing. And ultimately the hospice, I mean, Sandra spent a lot of time in Northampton General, and they did a great job, but they couldn't give the close care that the hospice can give. And what struck me was the difference in her from moving from the hospital to the hospice. It was almost as if she got a new lease of life. And for the 3 or 4 weeks that she was in the hospice, it was probably one of the best times of her life. And I know that sounds very strange to say that, but I think it gave her the energy and the focus to actually think about what was happening, but also think about us as well. And it was almost a refreshing time, and it certainly gave me the time to think through what was happening. And it was a real joy for me to see her actually perk up as well, and actually enjoy being somewhere, because she was in a lot of pain as well, and the pain was controlled here very much. And I always remember the funny time when we were not long after she'd moved here, and the drinks trolley came round. And I said to her, "Oh, do you think would you like a gin?" And she said, "Absolutely." Now, she wasn't a drinker.
No,
So it was So we actually had a lot of fun. When we were in the hospice, and I think that's the other thing I would like to say. It wasn't Sandra that was in the hospice; we were all in the hospice, and it became a bit of a community, and we got to know people, and that really helped us, certainly towards the end as well, when we were seeing familiar faces as well. So yeah, it was a good experience, and I wish and I hope more people that are in similar circumstances to us can can experience that, because it was really refreshing.
Yeah.
I think the thing I'd say is coming here, you can't extend her life, but you could put life into the days that she had left. And that was what was so important. She lived again, like Dad said, when she was in hospital, things were really tricky. And as soon as she came here, and I suppose a lot of people associate hospices with death.
Yeah.
But actually, it was so much more about living when we got here. And death was just a very, very small part of, almost like the final part of that, I guess. Whereas she came here and actually it was, like I say, it was very much about living. And Mum was always like that. She lived life to the full. She very much, everything was about life's too short, and wanting to do as much as possible herself, but also for all of us, and make sure we had the best experiences. And I think that's what the hospice brought. It brought her life back again. And like I said, I think probably lots of people who haven't had experiences of hospices, do associate it with death. And like I say, that's the very, very small part of it, because actually, she had her life back again. And as Dad says, probably a better version of it for that.
Because I can very vividly remember the day that she came here. I was at work and someone had phoned me to say she's going into Cynthia Spencer Hospice, and I immediately panicked because I thought, oh my God, like a hospice, like I automatically thought the worst. I thought, oh, it's going to be awful, but I think I'd actually met you in the car park.
Yeah, because I went to visit her in hospital the morning that they said they were moving up.
Yeah,
So
and I can remember so vividly walking into the hospice and go. I think we went into the waiting room first, which was lovely. And they had like games and books and stuff. And then I'll never forget walking into her room. She had this huge room and she was in the corner by the window and she just looked amazing.
Yeah.
Like incredible. I thought all of my worries were gone. She had these beautiful flowers next to the window, because you remember the flower room as well.
Yeah.
You could go and sort your flowers out. And I just thought, wow, I was really, really shocked and surprised. And then the whole way through, she was, there were good times and bad times, obviously, because she was ill. But when she had her afternoon cake, which she loved, the afternoon tea, the food was so much better. And all the volunteers who came in, and
there was no restrictions either. We could come when we wanted, and we could bring who we within reason. We could bring who we wanted.
Because it was an opportunity for your family to come down from Scotland as well, wasn't it?
We felt there was no restriction. We were able to do what we felt she needed as the journey progressed. So I brought my dog in at one point, and he came in, and things like that. It was really flexible. There was no restrictions. Everything was all about Mum, and as Dad says, all about what was best for Mum and what was best for us as a family. I think.
Yeah. And that's the difference between the hospital and the hospice. She still got the medical care, but there was that enhanced well-being, I guess is what it is, isn't it? Well-being.
She couldn't leave her bed, so she kind of was, as Alexandra said, she was in a corner. And there was one night I was here quite late one night, and this lovely nurse brought this big, she said, "Oh, Sandra, are you getting fed up of the view?" And she was like, "Yeah, a little bit," type thing. And we thought nothing of it. And then 5 minutes later, she came back with this massive screen, and it had like, I think the Maldives was on one side, and I can't remember the location on the other side. So I was standing in front of it, and Mum was taking pictures of me, pretending we were in the Maldives. And it's things like that, that I'll remember forever, moments like that. So that was really special as well. That was a lovely memory, and that was all done, that one nurse just, off something that my mum had said, and that one nurse had made the decision to bring that in, and that was really lovely, really special.
Yeah. Because you got to know the nurses quite personally. Like you and Dad were kind of there most of the time, and you kind of got to know them, and that was nice.
Yeah, it takes a special kind of person to be able to do a job like that, definitely, and to be able to do it with such compassion and care. Certainly.
My question that I've got is, what were your sort of fondest memories with her inside and outside of the hospice? Just, either in childhood or just, growing up, or even as an adult, some of your fondest memories, both inside and outside, because it'd be good to get more backstory about her as a person.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because,
rather than her being ill.
Obviously, it's about
Yeah.
but also, the person at the end of the day, and her story needs to be told.
Yeah.
Some sort of moments like that, if anything that you could think of.
This might be a good opportunity for Emily to say something. But we might do that separately.
Yeah, I wonder if that could be something we add on. So should we do not hospice related?
Yeah, so she had a great personality.
I think my most favourite thing about Mum was that she just loved everybody, and we had such an open door policy in our house, didn't we? That anyone and everyone was welcome, and she was just so loving. And, any friends that we had just became a part of the family.
Yeah.
And I think for me, if I think of my mum, that's what I think of. I just think of her being, just so loving.
Yeah.
I think...
Here she goes!
I think the best way to sum it up is that she was our best friend. She knew everything about our lives. She loved the gossip.
Oh, yeah.
And she loved to hear all about our lives, and we used to go because we were all me and Femi are slightly closer in age than the rest of them, and when we got to our 18 going out years, she used to drive us, because we lived outside of Northampton town. She used to drive us into town, and we'd stop off at the cash point, and she'd give us her card, and we'd get 20 quid out each. She'd drive us into town and go on, have a good night. Yeah. And then she just wanted us to go and have fun, and I think that sums it up quite well. Definitely. And I met her when I was at uni. One of my friends that I met at uni lived away, and he lived in Wales, so it was hard for him to go home. And because I went to uni about an hour down the road, whenever I went home, he would come. And now he's like our brother, and he was a bridesman at his wedding.
He's like our brother.
And so every weekend that I'd go home, he'd come with me, and he became part of the family, and she just and Dad accepted him into our lives. And it was the same with all, like you said, with all of our friends that we had. They always just became, and I think people knew us as the family that that's the kind of family that we were.
She was a bit devious as well, because all this money that was being given out, I knew nothing about.
She'd always say, don't tell your father.
Do you remember when we went to buy those sofas? We bought new sofas without Dad knowing. We were all there, we were a clan. I said that as we went in. Here's the clan. It was always the 4 girls, and mostly because you worked away a lot, but the 6 of us, or at least it was our mum with us 4, the sort of going into DFS. We were all sprawled across the sofas, and she was there with the credit card buying the sofas.
She just had such a zest for life.
That goes along with what you were saying. She was very much eat the cake, buy the handbag. That was her ethos in life.
She never said no to anything in terms of if it got to 12 o'clock at night, she'd be like, who fancies some chocolate? And we were like, we all fancy chocolate. So she'd bundle us all in the car, and off we'd all go to the late night Tesco and buy
or McDonald's.
Chocolate or McDonald's.
Does anyone fancy a cheeseburger?
She just lived life just to the full.
Yeah.
She really did. And I think she would not have had any regrets.
No, and she didn't.
And that's so peaceful, knowing that she went wherever she's gone, she went without any regrets, because she just lived life the right way.
Yeah.
She really did, didn't she?
Yeah. She loved, she was a crafter. Yeah. She loved knitting, and her and her sister Louise would go to sort of craft shows quite a lot. Sometimes we would go with them, and that was her passion. Quite funny, she never finished anything she started knitting though. That was kind of the joke, because she was so busy. We were always here, there and everywhere, because we were also, the 4 of us were Irish dancers. That was a huge part of our childhood. I think I must have been 5 when we started. So for my whole childhood up until 16, maybe 18, I can't remember when I stopped, but my whole childhood, we were all Irish dancers, and that took up a huge part of our life. But again, Mum and Dad were so supportive of that. physically and financially.
Yeah.
It was an expensive sport, but
Driving
they
us to
loved
Birmingham.
it. Yeah, because we went to a prestigious dance school in Birmingham.
And again, that was mum.
That was
That was mum. Only the best. We were only going to do what was best. And
I remember we went to a competition and she saw this teacher and she was like, my girls are going to dance with him.
Yeah.
And she emailed him, was like, I've got 4 daughters and I want them to dance at your school. And he replied and said, okay, bring them up to Birmingham. So she did.
And then the next day, none of us could walk.
Yeah. Because he was, yeah.
He was very strict.
Yeah. Maybe cut that bit out.
But also, on top of that as well, I think with our careers and what we now do as jobs, we were never restricted in what we following our passions. And obviously, Dad was just as supportive. But I don't want to leave Dad. Like, obviously, when we talk about mum,
It's really hard to make it feel.
Let's get it right. It was all mum. I just paid the bills.
But you also drove the car.
Yeah, no, but I do feel bad.
Taxi driver.
Only because mum's not here. That's why I was saying mum, but
like I was saying, like whatever we wanted to pursue, we were allowed to, and there was never a question about it, ever. And like I work in musical theatre in the arts, and that was never questioned. Like obviously, when someone goes, "Oh, I want to work in musical theatre," or "I want to do this," a lot of families get a lot of people get told, "No, you're going to be a doctor," or whatever. And especially like coming from I'm not going to say that. I was going to talk about the school, but I'm not going to talk about the school.
no, don't do that.
It wasn't the expected route, I guess. Yeah. But mum fought almost for me to be able to pursue the career that I wanted, and I put my success down to mum and dad. But I do put my success down to the upbringing that I had, and the fact that if I wanted to go to a musical in London, I went to a musical. But
she loved that as well.
But and
she
that was
loved going to the theatre.
Yeah, that was something that we
were
were
brought up.
Yeah, we
do
were.
that.
Yeah.
I think she brought you up with no limits. I think that was the thing. So we were very, very busy when they were young children, to the point that almost every weekend there was something going on. As the girls have said, during the week something was going on. But what Sandra and I both wanted was for the girls to experience things, experience life, and make their own decisions on what they were going to do in the future. And Sandra was, as the girls have said, was driven to make sure that there were no restrictions on what they could do. And the same as with Emmeline. Emmeline, there's a lot of prejudice against disability, etc. But Sandra just pushed, argued, discussed, and made sure that Emmeline was taken seriously and got what she needed. And actually, she eventually made sure that she went to do hairdressing at college, which Emmeline loves to do. I can always remember lots of phone calls, lots of I'm going to email this person, I'm going to email that person because this isn't right and that isn't right, she was driven to make sure that the girls got what they needed.
But I think on the back of that as well, certainly with Emmeline, she actually did make a difference in a lot of the schools. Like, for example, do you remember when she broke her leg and they had to put a lift in and things like that?
Yeah.
So
when Emmeline broke her leg.
Yeah, sorry, when Emmeline... But I think she really pushed for Emmeline where a lot of people weren't
I think
there for her,
I think you have to be a very strong type of person to be able to push in these situations.
Yeah.
And you know, there are lots of times where you could easily give up the fight.
Yeah. She didn't.
No, she didn't.
She never did. Even until at the end, I think I remember when we didn't know the diagnosis yet, but she wasn't feeling herself. And even then she was still sort of advocating for Emmeline while she was at college, because there was quite a lot going on, and she still put that first.
We even had a meeting in the hospice with the social worker.
Yeah.
So as she could make sure her opinion was heard. And because obviously at that time we were looking at what was best for Emmeline with her Down syndrome. We needed to make sure that she was going to be looked after, etc. So Sandra still had an opinion about what was right and what should happen, and it was quite interesting having the social worker come in. So Sandra lying on the bed, chairing the meeting as usual.
Is there any core sort of values that your mum taught you that always stick with you? I've got like some personal ones from my granddad and whatnot.
Yeah.
I always remember it. Is there any sort of core messages or core values that have always stuck with you from your mum?
I think for me, it's definitely family.
Yeah, I would agree.
We've always been very close family, but particularly since we lost Mum, we're inseparable, really. But also in like my personal life, like with my husband, and he has the same values as my family, and I know that we'll take that forward in our life. That's something that I feel very strongly about, that family comes first, but also sort of that idea of family, like with Sean, Lindsay's friend, our friend, and I've got some very close friends, and it's that sense of also, what do I want to say, like respecting people in that way, like they are your family. Yeah.
I think I'd say the same. I think the fact that just being that family, the reason we are all so close is because of the way that we've been brought up and the values that have been instilled in us. And, you know, we're so lucky to be such a close family, and that's come from Mum. And as Dad says, a lot of that comes from watching Mum fight for us and fight for what is right for our sister Emmeline. And we all now do that.
Definitely. I think as well, that sense of life's too short, I don't know how to put it better, but just kind of go for it, and obviously nothing crazy, but within reason. Don't be afraid, sort of take that chance, and 9 times out of 10 things go the way you want it to. But and I think not only did she teach us that, but also the manner of her passing has taught us that as well. That we don't have a long time here, and to make the most of it, I think.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing she probably, for me, is just to have a good heart. I think I looked at Mum and respected that so much from her that, I don't know, that's all I can only ever hope to be 50% of what she was with the heart that she had. But yeah, have a good heart and do right by the people, because that's what she taught us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sandra took ill in October 2019. Eventually she was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and almost immediately she started to feel really quite ill, lots of pain, and what we discovered when I took her in for a scan to the Northampton General Hospital, and as she got out the car she got into a lot of pain, and the cancer had spread into her bones at the top of her legs. Once she had the scan, we managed to get her home, but the pain was just getting more and more. And eventually we took her into hospital at the beginning of December. This was December 2019. And I've got to say we had the most horrendous Christmas that year. Sandra had an operation to try and pin her leg. But I think the cancer had, it was very aggressive and had eaten away at the bone quite a bit. The physiotherapists tried to get her up. The one thing Sandra wanted was to get home. In her mind, that was the target, was to be well enough to get back home. And the physiotherapist started working with her, and she eventually got up and started taking a few steps. But then the bones gave way again, and unfortunately that made her more bed-bound. And it was around about that time, and this was early in 2020, it was around about that time that I think the doctors and we decided that the best thing was for her to come here to Cynthia Spencer. And we were very confused. We weren't sure what that meant. I have to admit I didn't know much about Cynthia Spencer before Sandra came in here. I didn't know much about hospices and what they did. So we were a bit apprehensive, I think. What does this mean? What does it mean that we're going somewhere? But the doctors at that time and the nurses were very positive about it and made us feel very calm and relaxed about it. Saying, look, it will help you. And that, I think it was early February, Sandra moved into Cynthia Spencer. I can't remember exactly the dates for me. That whole time period is just a blur for me. But around about that time, and as we've said already, where she was down, in pain, not very positive in the hospital, she just changed her whole attitude, turned around within hours of moving into Cynthia Spencer. It was like a new lease of life, and she then spent, I can't remember, it was probably 3 or 4 weeks in Cynthia Spencer, but her still wish was to get home. And what Cynthia Spencer helped us with was to achieve that. We didn't realise at the time, but she actually only had 2 weeks when we eventually got her home. But it was great to have her home. It was her goal, and I think actually that the fact that she got home allowed her to move on. And yes, there was a very rapid decline, but I think that was she'd reached her goal, and she passed away at home. We couldn't have done that without the support of Hospice at Home. Femi and I spent all of our time with her at home, and my goodness, the moment the Hospice from Home nurse came in, and it was joyous because it was so tough, and they just took over and made sure that everything was right, that Sandra was comfortable, and I mean, it was a tough time, but helped so much by them, and the Marie Curie nurses as well. They were superb as well. So we had a lot of help and support when we got her home. And then she passed away early April in 2020.
The 6th of April, 2 days ago. Yeah. 4 years ago. So Emmeline has got her Lotso bear with her, and it was our mum's favourite cuddly toy. Mum would always have a cuddly toy for some reason. Don't know why. Maybe you know the origins, but she did.
don't.
I think she liked something to sleep with.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's Toy Story 3, isn't it? So it must have been when that came out. She always had a Lotso bear. And I think the original one actually got lost at the hospital.
Yeah.
Because you know how they sort of wrap the sheets up? I think it got wrapped in the sheets, and Mum was absolutely distraught. And I think Ben had bought her this tiny one off Amazon thinking it was huge. So she had this really tiny one with her that she'd kind of cradle. And then a few weeks later, I think Grandma and Grandad appeared with this Lotso, which was the final Lotso. And she cuddled it a lot in her last few days. And now Emmeline has it, and it gives her a lot of comfort. As you can see, you like Lotso, don't you, Emmeline? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's Lotso Bear.
Story behind Lotso.
Yeah.
So one of Mum's, as Dad said, Mum really wanted to make it home. And I think before we realised if there was a plan, or before we knew whether there'd be a plan for her to be able to come home successfully, the hospice arranged for Mum to come home on Mother's Day 2020. So they arranged for the equipment to be at home, they arranged for Mum to be transported home. So that was something else that was really important to Mum, was being able to be at home with us on that Mother's Day. So yeah, that was just something else really special that the hospice kind of facilitated and made sure was possible for her, really, and, you know, listening to her wishes.
Because they had the hospital bed as well, didn't they? We really cleared the lounge.
Yeah.
And
Everything was
everything
ready.
came,
for
private
her.
ambulance.
Private ambulance was ready
Yeah.
to bring her and take her home.
Well, yeah, because me towards maybe a week before she went, we spent a lot of time with her in the first week she was at home. But obviously she was then quite rapidly declining, so we made the decision that myself, Lindsay and Emmeline would go, and we said our goodbyes, and we knew that she was going to pass away at some point. So we made the decision as a family that Dad and Femi would stay behind and support, and then we took Emmeline in and at a distance did what we could. But yeah, you and Dad went through a really difficult week.
Well, we spent the time watching Sandra decline quite rapidly.
Yeah.
And if it hadn't been for hospice at home, we just couldn't have coped. She wouldn't have had her wish to pass away at home. So without that service, we could not have fulfilled Sandra's last wishes. And they were just a godsend, absolute godsend.
They made sure that Mum was looked after and cared for, but that we were as well. I didn't want to leave Mum's side, and if they hadn't been there, I wouldn't have. I didn't want to go and then something happened. So I think after about 5 days where I hadn't left her, this lovely hospice that we'd had so much care from them, and they'd helped me do everything for her, and we did everything together. And then it got to about 5 days and I hadn't really slept, and I had been sort of with her for a long time, and this hospice home nurse just said, "Femi, you need to go and have a bath." And I was like, I can't leave her. And they were like, anything happens, I will be straight up those stairs, because they literally move in with you. You know, they're with you. They were with me. They were with Mum. They were with Dad. Yeah, and I went upstairs and had a bath, and it was because it was April. It was quite nice weather. I had the window open, and I just had this lovely bath. And I came downstairs after about 20 minutes. She went, "No, go back upstairs and go and have a sleep." So I literally slept for about half an hour. Came back downstairs. And it was such a beautiful moment, because I'd been with her. I hadn't left her side. I didn't 100% know that she knew I was there, but then because I'd gone, when I came back, she opened her eyes, probably for the last time that she said anything. And she went, oh, there you are, because I'd come back into the room. And that's how I'll always remember that, because she knew I was there. She knew that I was looking after her, because when I wasn't there and I came back, she was obviously able to recognise that. So actually it was the best thing really that I did for me, but also to know that she knew I was there, and that was probably the last thing she really said. But yeah, even in sort of the final moments, you know, it's really tricky when you've not been through something like that. To kind of, they had to kind of teach me what to look for and teach me how to make sure she was comfortable. And there was a very high possibility that it could have been me on my own when she went to wherever she, you know, when she passed. So there was lots of support if that happened, and as she declined and as she deteriorated, they were really good at sensitively telling me some of the things to expect that I guess could have been quite traumatic but weren't, because of the sensitive nature of it, how it was all done really. And then when the moment came, I guess it's such a special moment, and I feel privileged that I was able to kind of share it with my mum. I think, you know, the fight had gone. There was no fighting left anymore. So I suppose all that's left to do is just love and just be compassionate. And yeah, that's a really special time in my life that I'll never forget. And that moment, that kind of time in her life that I was able to be a part of, where, like I say, all that was left to do at that point was just to love her and make sure that everything was okay. They kind of made me very aware that she could still hear me, and she could still hear music and feel me if I was there. So I would lie with her on the bed and put her favourite songs on. Yeah, I can truly say that she passed peacefully, because the hospice at home team were there to kind of support us through it. Yeah. I can truly say that her passing was peaceful, and she was able to pass away peacefully, holding my hand and holding Dad's hand. And the hospice at home nurse was just brilliant, and they got to know you so well without you realising. So as soon as Mum had passed away, and I didn't want to leave her, the hospice at home, it was at 9 o'clock in the morning, and the hospice at home nurse said, Vimy, can I get you a Pepsi Max? Because she knew that's what I drank. And that was running in my veins at that point, because it was all I was drinking to keep me awake. And it was little things like that where actually she knew my mum so well, and she knew my mum's final wishes, but they all knew us so well and knew what we needed in those moments. Yeah, very, very special people, like angels, I think. I explain to Emmeline a lot that the angels came to take Mum away. And I believe that the hospice at home team are the angels. I really do.
Well done, Vimy. That was really good though. I think that was really nice. I think what's also important as a sort of what could have been, because of the pandemic, COVID. So the day she came home, when we all officially went into lockdown, if she hadn't come home, I think we would have had a very different experience because of the restrictions as well. So I think, again, thanks to the sort of swift work of the hospice getting her home so quickly, it gave us the time to spend with our mum that we needed, because 2 weeks was a short but long time, so we still were able to each individually have time with her. Like, I can remember spending a lot of time just lying with her. She wasn't always completely compos mentis, but she knew we were there, and it was just comforting, because as well, I think when you're when she was in hospital, you know, you have all these wires and cannulas and all sorts. It's quite difficult to comfort her. But when she was at home, she had the equipment where she was able to sit on the sofa. So I can remember sitting on the sofa next to her, like I always used to before she was ill, in the same way, which was actually, I've never really thought about it until today, that was a lovely experience, because until then, the previous 4 months, she'd been in the hospital bed, and we hadn't really been able to comfort her properly in that way. We couldn't really lie with her or hold her. So actually that was really nice. And I think something that will always make me laugh is so her parents, so our grandma and granddad, because of the pandemic, they were both, what did they call it? Vulnerable. So they couldn't come in. Obviously mum was poorly. We had to stop any exposure. So she was in the lounge and we had the 2 windows open and they just popped their head in the window.
Yeah.
But again, they were able to do that because she was at home. Yeah. They would never have been able to come into the hospice because our granddad had a few health issues himself. But I'll never forget that. It was hilarious the way that they would have their heads popped in. But again, and they were able to deliver lots. So, and I'll always remember that. It was brilliant. Yeah, really special.
A lot of the hospice at home team as well, nurses that came, were able to kind of share stories of other people, and that really helped, like without being too sort of frank, it really helped to kind of understand what to expect really with mum. And I remember one of them told me a story about how this man hadn't been able to kind of let go until his friends, he lived in a pub or something, and until all his friends had come and said goodbye. And I remember telling Dad the story, and I said, Dad, you need to go in there and you need to say goodbye because she's holding on, and you did, didn't you? You went in and you said goodbye, and then it was the next morning. I knew as soon as I woke up that we were there, and then it was the next morning then that I came and got you, and I think she'd, again, like I say, the fight had gone, and it was just about being there and loving her and supporting her, and it was things like that make something that's quite scary and unknown really quite familiar and quite kind and caring.
Yeah, I think along with what we were talking about earlier with her sort of her personality as well, I think that was important to her just to finally make sure that we were all okay.
Yeah.
That's all she needed to know. She just wanted to check, I guess, with Dad that everything was okay and she could go.
Yeah.
And I think that's all her ducks were in a row and off she went.
Well, we actually, because of COVID, we made the decision to stop. Me and Dad had to kind of evaluate towards the end, when she was really, really declining and difficult to care for, but we had to make the decision. There were so many people coming in and out of the house, and at this point we didn't really understand COVID. We'd just gone into lockdown, that me and Dad had to make the decision, well, what's the most beneficial thing for us to access here? So we stopped everything. We stopped the carers. We stopped, as much as possible, NHS nurses. They just came to administer her medication in the mornings, but it was hospice at home that we made sure that we carried on and continued, because that was what for us was the most valuable part of her care at that moment. So when things really boiled down to it, that was what we decided to keep. It allowed, hospice at home allowed me to be her daughter and look after her, and allowed Dad to be her husband in those final moments without us feeling like we were nurses. That's what it allowed us to do. Because as Dad said, that was her final wish. She really wanted to be at home, and there were times before they had come to the house where we thought, we can't do this. That was what it allowed us to be to be her family and not be her carers.
Just on what might be quite valuable for people to hear about, I think, is as far as when someone is, they're going to pass away, how you kind of can talk about and understand what their wishes are, because it sounds a lot like Sandra was able to let you know what she wanted, and therefore you could fulfil that. Yeah. Whereas I could imagine, again, in different situations, sometimes people might try and make decisions that they think are best because they've not had conversations to actually understand what someone's wishes are at that time.
So I'm trying to think how to put this. We discussed with Mum what her final wishes were in terms of how she wanted to pass away, where she wanted to pass away, and what was important to her. And we made sure that we had those discussions when she was feeling well. So sometimes we had to have them in kind of short bursts.
But I think it was the fact that she was in Cynthia Spencer that gave us that environment that allowed us to have that conversation, or those conversations, in a very constructive way, because Sandra, when she was in the Cynthia Spencer hospice, actually had a new lease of life, and we could actually talk quite rationally and about what was happening and how things would progress for the best. So we were very clear on what she wanted, which was very important.
And also what she wanted in terms of funeral arrangements and things like that. She made it really clear what she wanted, what music she wanted, what she wanted it to look like. And quite often, as I was looking after her towards the end, she would say, "What do you think about that music that I've chosen?" You know, it was something that she would quite often talk to me about and ask me about. So something that I feel we knew exactly what she wanted, and I feel we were able to deliver that within the realms of COVID again. So yeah.
But I guess as well, if she hadn't have known, Cynthia Spencer would have been able to help.
Yeah.
There would never be a question that was too crazy.
Yeah.
There was, all the nurses were so approachable, and it was like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like a sanctuary.
Yeah,
like
and
it just felt like you walked in and no one was sort of judging or making you feel uncomfortable. It was just very much, "Oh, hello, Alexandra, how are you? Like, come in, have some cake or whatever." It made you feel at ease.
Yeah, we knew we knew that anything we needed to ask or anything we needed from someone, we were able to get, and we would, if the person we asked didn't know, they would find out. You know, nothing was difficult for us. Nothing was made to be difficult for us.
There was so much we could have. I don't think lucky's the word, but like Mum knew what she wanted.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the difficult conversations weren't so difficult. But had they been difficult, I think there was the support available, the well-being, because they had the chaplain as well, and things like that. So yeah, very, very supportive. Emmeline and Mum had a very, very, very close relationship, didn't you? So during the week, they had a very strict schedule. So was it a Wednesday that you went to Beckwith? Can you remember?
No,
Friday. So a Friday afternoon, they would always go down to Beckwith Emporium, and Emmeline would have chips. And I don't know what Mum would have.
What
a
would
scone.
Mum have?
What did Mum have at Beckwith?
Pate.
Pate.
Brixworth pate.
So Mum would have the Brixworth pate, Emmeline would have chips. And every Friday you went, and sometimes Grandma and Grandad would go, wouldn't they, with you? Yeah, so Emmeline and Mum were very, very close.
Yeah.
Emmeline was so special to Mum and all of us. Mum called you her joy, didn't she? Yeah.